The Analytical Commentary section of the exam, Section B, requires you to give a response to a written text or a transcription of a spoken text, which demonstrates your understanding of meta-language and the course content of both Units 3 and 4. It is worth 40% of the potential marks of the exam. There is no prescribed method or structure for writing an AC, but it is still important to make sure that you write clearly and coherently. Because of this, you should have an idea of how you want to approach the AC before you enter the exam, which you will gain through practice. Some methods of organising an AC that work for some students include organising paragraphs by the subsystem of the features being analysed, or a holistic approach that groups features that tell us similar things about the text. For example, writing a paragraph about register, one for purpose, and another for context. Step 1. Read the context. Texts are almost always accompanied by a few sentences that provide some idea of the text's context. These things can include the setting, the relationship between speakers, and the mode of the text. It is okay to repeat some or all of these things in your AC, but do not simply copy verbatim. Try to rephrase what is written and make it relevant to your own analysis. It can also be a good idea at this stage to skim through the text quickly, reading any subheadings and the first sentences of paragraphs, so that you have a good idea of what's happening in the text before you even begin to read it. Step 2. CRAMP. It's a good idea to make some sort of plan. One way to keep in mind the things that you need to talk about is by using the mnemonic CRAMP. The C stands for context. You want to identify the situational context, the setting and the behaviour of any interlocutors, the social context, the relationship between the participants in the text and their social distance, and the cultural context, the attitudes, beliefs, and/or customs that the writer or speaker is bringing with them. The R is for register. This is the level of formality of a text. Be as specific and detailed as you can in your description of register. Words like frozen, formal, consultative, casual, and intimate can be useful here. A is for audience. Ask yourself who is being directly targeted within or by this text, i.e. the primary audience, and who is more distanced from the text, i.e. the secondary audience. The M is the mode of the text. Is it written, spoken, or is it maybe a digital communication? Think about what effect this will have on the text's style. Finally, the P is the text's purpose. Ask why it was written or took place, and what was trying to be achieved. Step 3. Annotation. You will want to now go ahead and annotate your text. This means identifying features that you feel you can analyse well with reference to CRAMP. Some students find it helpful to use different coloured highlighters for features that will go in each of their paragraphs. Also, write on the text any relevant metalinguistic terms that you are going to use when writing your AC. The more metalanguage that you have now, the better. Step 4. What features make this text unique or interesting? Now that you've annotated as many features that you can in the time available, it's time to think about which ones you're going to include in your AC, because in the short 2-hour exam you won't really have time to discuss everything. Try to think about what features are making the text that is in front of you unique. These will be features which you can analyse in an interesting way, while remaining very specific to the text in front of you. Step 5. How am I going to organise my ideas? So now it's time to group the features that you've identified and labelled into paragraphs. Think about the order that you are going to discuss them, and if you're approaching the AC holistically, ensure that you aren't going to want to talk about the same feature more than once in different places or in different paragraphs. Step 6. The introduction. The steps that you've already done should make actually writing the AC much easier and overall faster. So let's start with an introduction. Most often, it is advisable that you give a brief mention to all the different parts of CRAMP that we discussed earlier, before you even begin to analyse specific features. This gives the marker of your AC a good idea of the direction that you're going to go in, and how well you've interpreted the text as a whole. You may wish to write a sentence for each letter of CRAMP, or combine a few letters. Your introduction does not have to be long, but it does have to be accurate, and most crucially, specific to the text. Try not to write something like, "This written text uses a formal register." Instead, write something more like, "This written newspaper article, published by The Age in 2017, employs a professional formal register, which reflects the journalist's desire for his work to be respected and credible." Step 7. Body paragraphs. Start off your body paragraphs with a topic sentence, which gives a clear indication of the main idea of the paragraph. For example, you have decided to write a paragraph on how the coherence and cohesion of a text are created and maintained. Make sure that this is clear from the start of the paragraph. Next, introduce the first feature that you want to discuss by quoting it in some way and giving the relevant line numbers. If you are talking about a specific word which appears twice in the same line, if possible, reference it specifically by using some form of meta-language. For example, if the lexeme that occurs more than once, maybe reference it by saying that it's a conjunction. When giving line numbers, you can simply put the number in brackets after the quote, or reference it specifically. For example, by saying on line 7. Try to integrate the quotation as smoothly as you can into your sentences and only quote the relevant parts of the text which you are actually analysing. The body paragraphs are also where you can use the widest range of meta-language, both in labelling and identifying features, and also in your analysis of them. Try to think about CRAMP and how the feature that you have identified proves what you have said in your introduction about context, register, audience, mode, and social purpose. You may also want to lead your discussion in the other way and explain how the elements of CRAMP are affecting what language and how language is used in the text. For your analysis, it is most important to discuss the social purpose and the identities expressed by the language used. By keeping these things at the forefront of your discussion, you're ensuring that you demonstrate familiarity with the topics of Units 3 and 4 as the task description requires. You will find that this is easiest if you have chosen to discuss the features that most make the text unique and interesting. Step 4, because this is generally where language variation is most prominent within a text, which fosters discussion about social purpose and identity. After you've discussed all the features which you decided during your annotation, you will want to conclude your paragraph in some way. You have one more chance to show your examiner that the features and analysis that you have provided are highly relevant to the text and provide insight into the topics of Units 3 and 4. A good way to conclude a paragraph is to explain why whatever the topic of your paragraph is relevant to the specific text in front of you, but there are many ways to go about this. Step 8. Maybe write a conclusion. A conclusion in an AC is not strictly necessary, but it can be a useful way for you to finish your AC in an impactful and coherent manner. It shouldn't be much longer than a few sentences, so you have enough time for your main body paragraphs, but it should link what you've said in your paragraphs to the elements of CRAMP, and vice versa. Step 9. Proofread and edit. In the actual exam, you may not have time to thoroughly proofread and edit your work, but hopefully by that time you will have had enough practice that your first draft is still pretty good. When you are doing practice ACs, however, proofreading and being critical of your own work is one of the best ways to improve both the style of your writing and the quality of your discussion. If your analysis seems fragmented and irrelevant to you, you've probably found an area that you may not be entirely comfortable with, or a meta-language term that you don't quite understand. Fortunately, you have time to correct this before it actually matters. Try to aim to read each of your ACs at least twice after you've written them, and keep notes of areas where you need to improve. Step 10. Discuss with others. Another great way to get better at writing ACs is comparing with others. Everyone discusses different features in different ways, and often this can help you to see better or different ways of approaching different texts. Collaboration can also be really helpful in the annotation and CRAMP stages of writing the AC, especially if you are finding it difficult to find enough interesting features to discuss, or are unsure about how to describe something like the register, for example. Try to compare your AC to others as a whole as well. Hopefully your overall interpretations of the text agree, but if they do, this is a pretty good indication that your analysis is accurate. But if one person says that a text is for entertainment, but the other thinks it's to provide some legal guidelines, something's probably gone wrong in one or both of your commentaries. AC writing can be difficult to begin with, but can become quite straightforward and formulaic once you get used to being able to discuss a text without relying on the prompts from short answer questions. Just remember to be precise, be relevant, and use meta-language.